This is a
Got it. Let me
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm out in the field, and I do have a question I'd like to ask at some point.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and start us off with that before I get the latest news?
Okay. The question is, I disassembled a 12-panel array with microinverters. Excuse me, and so I'm testing them offline. That is, I hook a panel to them and hook the microinverter through a trunk line to 240-volt AC. And I'm very surprised that I've tested about 6 so far, and none of them. What happens is, the red light blinks for a bit, and then it's supposed to turn to be I think is it a solid green light? I don't remember.
Yeah, it would be solid green, or it could be amber if it's not communicating properly through the system.
Okay. Well, I guess the best thing, I don't remember whether it might have been amber, and I guess the best thing is to try to hook up a clamp-on ammeter to see whether power is coming out of it.
Yeah, because the green basically means it's communicating through the end phase. What do they call it? Enlightened system. So
yeah, that's a wireline communication.
Yeah, but it has to have the Enlighten hooked up and making the connection to end phase in order for that green light to come on.
Good point. Okay. And I actually know my Enlighten is not hooked up at this point in time.
Okay.
So I guess the best solution is to go ahead and hook up the, I think I have a clamp-on AC ammeter. I hope it works. If not, I'll fix that. Anyway, great. That is that's the solution. Just to verify I'm getting 0.8 amps or so out of the thing, and then I'll know it's good.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That should work. Yeah. If I remember their color coding, it's red, it's not connecting at all. Amber, it's connecting but not communicating, and green means everything's cool. So.
Okay. I guess I have one other question. I was an early adopter of Enphase, and there are some M190s in the system, some of which I have 8 out of 40 that aren't working, and there's always the option of getting a warranty replacement. However, I did get an email from Enphase. They're wanting me to upgrade, and I assume they upgrade to IQ7 or something like that. Any thoughts on that? Should I just go ahead and try to have them honored to the warranty and replace the ones that aren't working, or upgrade? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I had one, and it was I think it was the M195s, and when they sent me an IQ7. And I just did the regular warranty upgrades or warranty replacement. So I think it may be that they don't have any of those old ones. So they're trying to get you to pay a difference. But if you just say no, they're going to send you the new one.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So
okay. Well, I'll explore that. I was going to try to find 8 good ones out of the batch that I have and put them in the system where the bad ones are. Anyway, by the way, I have another question. I'm sorry, all these questions.
No, that's all right.
This group. So there is the trunk line, and has the later versions of IQ7, and as they move forward from the original ones, do they still use a trunk line?
Yes, but it's different. It's a different trunk line. It's a 2-wire trunk line. They only run the hots. They don't have a neutral. They don't have an equipment ground. And the connection plugs are different. And as a result, the cost is a lot less for the new trunk line. So with the IQ series, whether it's the 6s, the 7s, now coming up on the 8s, it uses a different trunk line. So they're not compatible. The M195s, the M250s, those had the old 4-wire trunk lines.
So it sounds like I will, so I have 4-panel, 8-panel, 16-panel trackers. And some of the bad microinverters are on the 16-panel tracker. They're all over the place. So it sounds like, unless I can get the original inverter with the original trunk line, is that I'll have to start from scratch with a 4-panel, because all 4 panels have to be the same, and same true with a 16-panel. I'll have to get new inverters, unless I can get the ones that are compatible with the old trunk line.
I think they sent me an adapter, with the new microinverter that simply clicks into the unit with the new trunk line, but it adapts to the old trunk line.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
I'm pretty sure that that's what they'll do. They'll send you that little adapter with the replacement microinverter.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks so much for the information.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to rewire it. I mean, that wouldn't make much sense, from their warranty standpoint. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and Don, I wanted to ask you, you're running the standalone system, and I was just seeing a term that was new to me for surge ratings on appliances, referred to as the LRA, the locked rotor amps. Are you familiar with that term, where basically they were saying that's a term that you can find on like a motorized spec, like on an air conditioner or a pump? And that's essentially the surge amps that this thing could draw. So if you're wanting to calculate your inverter size.
I have not. I know when on the inverters that I have, it does have like, a surge amount. For 0.1 seconds, it'll do twice as much. And for 3 or 4 seconds, it'll do, or maybe a minute, it'll do, 1.5 times or something in excess of the standard rated inverter. But I haven't, if I've seen that term, I've kind of read over it and didn't register.
I was thinking, if that's a thing, it's going to be very helpful. Because for instance, I was trying to use a solar generator to back up our water pump, just in case the power goes out. And that thing's a 0.5 horsepower motor. And so when you figure that, that's going to be about 350 watts when it's running, more or less. But so I hooked up a 2,000 watt inverter thinking that's going to be enough. Well, it fried that thing right away.
It started, yeah.
No, as soon as it did, it just squealed. So I hooked up a 4 kW, and that ran it, but it didn't seem happy. So I was just wondering if there's a thing I can look at that says, hey, this takes X number of amps, during startup. That would be very helpful in trying to estimate, doing your load analysis for the size of the inverter.
Yeah, I haven't seen that term. I know in some of the stuff, like when I put in an electric dryer and some other equipment. And when I was doing that, I did see where it had a separate number, a startup number for here's what it's going to draw as you turn it on and start pulling. Kind of the other side of the surge for the inverter.
Yeah.
But it probably did have something like that on there, but I just read through it and didn't pay attention because I wasn't aware of it.
I'll have to do a little more research. I know the surge rating on these things is usually about twice on the inverter. So if it's like a 4 kW, it'll do 8 kW for 5 seconds or whatever. But
exactly,
the surge on the appliances, they say, can be 5 to 35 times their running amperage. So if you've got something that can run 35 times as much, that's going to take a big inverter. So
yeah, that doesn't sound, that maybe, I don't know, we get a big ice cream churn or something, I don't know, but I mean, this
big high torque thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a washer dryer out there. I've got a lot of equipment. My father-in-law is constantly running power tools, and I'll see a surge come through when it turns on, the big electric saws or things like that, or the water pumps at my house too. I can tell when they're on too.
Yeah.
Just from the power it's drawing, but
yeah, I can see that in my house, because even though it's connected to the grid, the lights will dim for a second, when the pump kicks on,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Or my app tells me exactly how much it's drawing. It doesn't tell me by switch. I mean, I know there's an app out there where you can put it into your electrical box, and it'll tell you how much each circuit's drawing.
Yeah.
And that way you can kind of tell what's going on. But just in general, I've got one for the panels, and it tells me how much I've drawn at any point. And I mean, I know what's in the house, and there's only one guy there. So, when it turns on the dryer, I know he's got the dryer on. When the air conditioning goes on, I know that too. But
Okay.
or the water pump. But yeah, that seems that I would say it was a couple times maybe when the motor starts up. Obviously, when any motor starts up, it's going to take more to get it up and going.
Yeah.
But 35 times sounds incredibly excessive.
Yeah, I would think. I could see 5 times, but 35 times, yeah.
Even 5 times, I mean, that seems, maybe that's old equipment, but I mean, when I put in stuff like, the washer's not going to pull a lot, but it's got a motor. When I looked at that stuff, it had a number for startup, but it was nothing near what we're talking here.
Yeah, I'll see if I can see it on my pump just to get a sense of that. Because once you know the amps, you can figure out the watts, of course.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let me jump into the news this week. A couple of minor items, not a whole lot of news going on, but there's a company called Yotta, Yotta, and I had mentioned before they're beginning to offer some panel level batteries. Sort of the micro inverters of batteries where you hook them up directly, one battery for each panel. So they're doing a testing of this product at San Antonio's Fort Houston base. I'm not sure if that's Air Force or Army. So that'll be interesting to see. They're claiming, this is going to be hot weather test. Strikes me a cold weather test is going to be a little more problematic. So my guess is they're because batteries will function fine in the heat. It's going to be the extreme cold that's going to be an issue. And speaking of batteries in Hawaii, they've got a battery bonus program, which is kind of interesting. The state will reimburse up to $850 per kilowatt of storage capacity. It said kilowatt, but I imagine it should be kilowatt hour of capacity for batteries. And the exchange there is they want you to make that power available to them for a fixed 2-hour period during the day. So my guess is this is their way of building up some storage capacity for that evening surge that they have with the curve, because in Hawaii they generate so much power in the afternoon that then early evening, as soon as the sun sets, there's a huge surge of demand in the grid. So they're going to try and do some load shifting there. But I found that kind of
blenders.
Yeah,
Their blenders and their TVs.
Yeah, everybody's doing the daiquiris and life's tough in Hawaii. So. Then in Ohio news, that the Ohio Power Siting Board just recently approved a 110 megawatt solar facility up in Defiance County. It's supposed to begin fourth quarter of 2022, create 168 jobs in solar. So that's good. I suspect that'll be short-term jobs for that. And
Jay, back on your Yotta one, what's the battery chemistry they were using? I'm just curious. What those little per panel batteries? What kind of chemistry were they using there?
I think they're lithium-ion batteries.
Lithium-ion, okay.
Yeah, but even lithium-ion, it's supposed to do better, of course, under the various temperature extremes. But I have seen that they do suffer in extreme cold weather. Their capacity is limited to some sort. It's better than lead acid for sure. And you're not going to have any freezing issues, like you would with a lead acid battery. But if you look at the installation, they showed a picture of it and it looks like it's just a large microinverter attached directly to each panel. That'd be interesting to see. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't I guess if you had asked me in the early days of microinverters, does that make any sense? I'd probably just say, why are you creating that many? But yeah, who knows? It'll be a new technology. We'll see. And it certainly qualifies with the 2021 code requirement of batteries being stored outside. So so the temperature issue is going to be a temperature issue for all battery systems after that. But I do expect we'll start to see some temperature controlled storage units for batteries, being quite widely available, out there on the market. And I did notice when I was looking through all the news, there's a lot of grant money starting to filter out into the world. It tends to go to the usual suspects, the different schools, different governmental agencies, unions, for their training programs, that kind of thing. I'll be curious to see how effective all of this stuff is. Oftentimes they love to give out money. They don't really care if it does anything or if it doesn't do anything. It's just a feather in your cap to say, I gave $15 million to the Appalachian Renewable Energy Program or whatever. And then because I live here in the heart of Appalachia, so do you, Don, I know. So many of those programs are so badly run that you just look at them and go, really? Could have done better just throwing money on the street and see who picks it up, So
it's not far off. I've seen a slightly different topic, but they just have general, in our county, they're trying to give money away. They're called up and saying, hey, do you want to build a pond? If you build a pond, we'll pay 60% of it. And you don't have to do anything, just build, there's different things like that are just big grants of money that are out there that if you look around.
Yeah. I ran into a thing. My wife, for so many years, we resisted getting involved with the Farm Bureau people, or not the Farm Bureau, but the USDA. And they have a program, I forget the acronym, but they put in fencing, for agricultural. And it was
in here too, yes.
Yeah, and we ran into by the time it was all over, I was like, we would have been so much better just to have paid for this fence, installed it. It would have been cheaper. It's like we'll pay 90%. Well, their 90% ended up being 50% of costs that were about 3 times what it would have been had we not had to follow all their specs, and took 5 years instead of 1 year. And so I was ranting and raving about that, saying it's enough to turn you Republican, so.
That was the other one, was ponds and fencing were the 2 main ones they were trying to sell to us.
Yeah. So, well, who knows? I mean, but we're going to see this. Renewable energy, at least in this administration, is the new big thing. And they're going to be dumping tons and tons of money into this. And we'll just see how effective these programs become. So,
well, Jay, they're going to have to pass it first. They've been, I don't know how closely you track it, but within the last week, they've been having more trouble kind of herding their cats together. They've got the Ocasio-Cortez on one side and the Joe Manchin on the other side, and getting those two to agree on one thing is getting more difficult. I'm sure
but it's not really all dependent on that reconciliation bill that they're looking at, because a lot of this is coming through things like the Farm Bill and other programs that are not controversial in nature. They've got educational programs that are out there. So they're funneling, every department is sort of funneling money towards renewable energy. So
they're all supposed to do some green, but there's a big chunk, I think it was in the hundreds of billions, that's in the $3.5 trillion one. That's what they've been trying to push through at the moment.
Yeah, and that's of course part of the big climate change initiative that's included within that. And we'll see. I suspect they'll end up compromising on something, but even if it's a $1 trillion, it's a lot of money. I mean, I don't have that.
Somebody will have to pay back.
You never know. I mean, it's funny. I remember when the federal deficit under Carter hit $1 trillion and people were freaking out. How could we ever pay back $1 trillion? Now they go that much deficit in a couple of months. So,
Mhm.
the reality is the federal government is not like you or I. I mean, when you're allowed to print your own money, I guess you don't ever have to pay it back.
We could keep saying that. Check history, Jay. There's been a few times when different governments have gone down for over, things like that happen.
Sure. And
everybody thinks it's different their time.
I know you're an accountant, and it depends on what you're going in debt for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. If you're going in debt for infrastructure, that would almost be like taking out a mortgage on your home. If
That's
the
right.
value of the asset becomes greater than the cost of the improvement. So that's good debt. Bad debt is throwing away money at, Iraq, would be bad debt. That's just wasted money.
Right. Well, that plus, increasing, and good for kids, but increasing the child credit, calling it human infrastructure. I don't think we're necessarily paying for those kids to go to college. We're paying for them to, eat, drink, whatever they're going to do, but they're going to. I don't feel that's the best investment of our money, as far as the parents might not be spending it on the kids or anything productive to begin with.
Yeah, I don't want to, I won't debate that, only because I don't know enough about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just think generally the infrastructure stuff you're saying is exactly right. When you start calling everything infrastructure and just change the definition to.
Yeah, that becomes silly. That becomes silly. I agree. Yeah, but these are the games people play when you're in politics. Speaking of credits and things like that, I think I was going to touch on incentives that are out there, because I've been doing some evaluations, and I know we've sort of hit on these in parts in previous ones, but I thought I'd try and recap what are the incentives that are currently out there in the marketplace, because this stuff changes periodically. So for residential, the investment tax credit is the big one, and that's currently at 26%, scheduled to go down, to stay at 26% in 2022, then reduce to 22% in 2023, then drop to 10%, but only for commercial projects in 2024. So that, and by tax credit, we mean essentially money off your tax bill. So a one-to-one, not a tax deduction, but a tax credit. There is a legislation that's been introduced called the Residential Solar Opportunity Act, which is stated goal is to increase this investment tax credit back up to 30% and to run it for 5 full years, I assume starting in 2022, then phasing down to 10% in 2028. So there must be a phase down, an interim step, maybe the 22% one in there, because I think the numbers don't match. 2027 would have to be a phase down. And the plan is this is going to be introduced in the Budget Reconciliation Act later this year. Now, I'm not quite.
I think they did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. That'll be interesting. See if that goes through. I suspect. I mean, these tax credits have been fairly bipartisan in the past. They keep pushing them off. I think it's kind of, we don't want to do it forever, but we'll throw another 5 years, another 5 years, and we'll see if it keeps going. I think there's a pretty good chance that's going to go through. I'm not quite sure about the moving for the cash back on that instead of a tax credit, giving a rebate essentially if you don't pay taxes. The commercial, we've discussed before, accelerated depreciation is a big tax benefit. And under that accelerated depreciation, you can depreciate out the full cost of the system, less 50% of your investment tax credit in the first year. So currently you could depreciate out 87% of the cost in your first year. And if the corporate tax rate as it currently stands is 21%, that can be a significant amount of money. It'll be in the neighborhood of 18, 19% of your total cost of the system is offset. And then the Oh, Biden proposed we raise the corporate tax rate to 28. The Democrats came back in their bill and reduced it to 26.5. So we'll probably compromise at 15. You know,
Well, I'll just say Joe Manchin said he won't go any higher than 25.
25. That seems like a logical compromise when you're all done, taking it from 21 to 25.
Yeah.
So we're in that range. You know, so I don't know how many corporations actually pay 25% or 21% even. There are a lot of deductions out there and a lot of smart accountants, you know.
They all pay that or more, Jay.
Well, they do on the part that's not.
That's taxable, the
deductible.
taxable income.
Yeah, but that's not the per se.
It depends. That's kind of metaphysical when you start. Yes, but yes.
Yes. Spoken like a true accountant, right? Okay, then we have the REAP grants. The REAP grants are a big deal for agricultural businesses or any business located in an area with 50,000 people or less. Any municipality is considered an agricultural business. That's 25% grant, so money back. You have to apply for these funds. There are 2 application windows. One ends March 31st, one ends October 31st, and there is a limited amount of money available. So I guess it's a first come, first serve. But I know they've been having trouble giving away all that money. So I don't know that it's basically, I think you can assume you're going to get it, at least under current conditions.
And Jay, are those any business or targeted for any particular types of businesses?
Well, it is targeted for agricultural, but they consider any business.
That's what I mean. If you are in a rural area, do you start up a medical treatment center for people who are on opioids? It's in a $50,000 or 50,000 person or less business area.
You could start up a bar. You could start up a convenience store, as long as it's located in a rural area. Then it would qualify. There are some other stipulations in there, like it's got to be separately metered. You couldn't have a home business unless you can demonstrate that the business is separated and the power usage is separated. I've just seen they don't actually require separate meters necessarily, but you got to have like a sub panel that can be then assessed to determine how much of your energy usage going to business, how much is going to your home. So,
and would they cover storage too, or just generation?
No storage. That's right. Okay. Yeah, it's only generation and energy conservation. So there is some of that. So if you wanted to insulate, put in efficiency windows, things like that, that could be covered as well. Then there's RECs, of course, the SRECs, the renewable energy certificates. Currently, the RECs are only available in 8 different states and districts: New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, DC, Ohio, Delaware, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. Those are the states that have RECs. They go from a high of $415 a REC in DC to a low of $9.50 in Ohio. Yay, Ohio. Some of the others.
Kentucky.
Yeah, better than Kentucky. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
New Jersey.
Here.
Yeah, New Jersey is like 234. Massachusetts 322, Delaware's 39, Illinois 82, Pennsylvania's 33. So those are, of course, in Ohio, I found it's not even worth doing the paperwork to get the RECs because I think it costs like $100 a year or something to do the paperwork. And, I guess I generate about 12 RECs a year from my system. So in theory, I could make $120. Yeah, $120 for $100 investment. It's probably better than going to Vegas, but not worth it. So another one that's a state program, there's a lot of loan programs out there. Ohio has one called EcoLink. Essentially, they will subsidize the interest rate on loans for solar by 3%. So that's an easy one to participate in. If you go to a bank that's working through the Link program, Key Bank is an example, they will simply do the paperwork. And now if you're borrowing at say 8%, you only are paying at 3 or at 5%. So I'm not sure what bank loans go for at the moment, but that's how that works. So the state is basically subsidizing 3% of your interest. There's also some state sales tax exemptions when you're buying product, and the ones that currently have an exemption for state sales tax for solar: Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Ohio, but only for the cities of Cincinnati and Cleveland, which is weird. Rhode Island, Tennessee, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin. So again, not Kentucky. So your guys, well, look at who your senators are. What can I say? You know, if you had a lottery.
I like at least one of them.
Okay, I don't even want to know which one. That's one more than I like.
Fair enough.
All right, property tax exemptions. We get into some of the local. Studies have shown, which was interesting, I had not really seen some definitive studies, but apparently some studies of tax assessments have found when you install solar, your assessment goes up around 1% on your property. You know, on average, it varies state to state and assessor to assessor, but they're saying, okay, about 1%. So you're going to get dinged for increasing the value of your property by investing in solar. And some places will then exempt that added valuation from taxes.
Let me ask you, are they suggesting that people, because obviously what I do, I have worked for a company that got property all over the country, and almost every place I've seen, the assessors don't actually go out and do anything. They just kind of knock everybody up 3% every couple of years. Like in Ohio, every 3 years you have the revaluation where they just kind of knock you up, but nobody ever actually goes out and looks. Are they suggesting that the putting in the solar makes them go out and look?
I don't know. I think a lot of people may think that their guy goes out. Maybe certain cities go out and look.
Yeah.
I know we're in Ohio. It's exactly that. They come in and they say, okay, we're going to raise your taxes this amount. If you want to challenge it, then we'll come out and look and make the assessment. So and
you come in with a valuation or an appraisal, and that's how you fight it. But yeah,
well, we ran through that a lot when fracking was a thing, and they started upping the price of land based on the perceived value of the mineral rights.
Right.
And so if you didn't own your mineral rights, well, that didn't help you out much either, which was, kind of interesting. But they've assessed our home so low that I don't want them ever to come out and take a look at it, because I would just assume, okay, you want to add 5%? Great, fine, just leave it be. So, but the property exemptions, that's a thing. There's also some PACE financing, which is very localized. And PACE financing stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And Property Assessed Clean Energy is essentially saying, if you want to put in solar, and this is for businesses only typically, we can then loan you the money. And I found an example. It's either a 10 or a 20-year payback, no down payment, no credit check. And they will loan you the money at a fixed rate. In this example, it was 5.99%. And then you pay it back on your property tax over the 10 to 20 year. I assume the reason there's no credit check is because property may change hands, so it really doesn't matter who the owner is. And they'll just repossess.
And if you do something bad, they'll just take your property anyway.
Yeah, well, they're good at that. And
government.
So that's a good option, especially if you're thinking about it from a business standpoint. You're like, okay, I don't have the funds, or I don't want to spend the funds, but I do pay my utility bill, and I may as well get the money loaned to me. And if it turns out when I do the numbers, it's cheaper for me just to pay this on the tax bill than it is for me to pay my utilities. You know, it's a nice little thing. Plus, we've seen where if you don't know if the tenant could change or you know, you don't own the property, but you own the business and you're willing to work with your landlord, property owner, that might be an example where PACE comes in and is a good deal. So, but that has to be specifically legislated or passed by the authority having jurisdiction. This case is usually going to be a city, could be a county, but I think mostly they're cities that come up with this PACE financing. And then the last one was, well, there are two more. The rebate programs. I mentioned the one in Hawaii as an example, where they're gonna, if you put in batteries, they'll refund. There are a lot of localized utility-based programs trying to incentivize. Sometimes it's the result of a lawsuit. I know when I was on the board of Green Energy Ohio, there was a lawsuit against Duke, and they had to pay a few $1,000,000, but then Green Energy was given that money as an incentive program to administer. Like, if you installed solar thermal systems, we could give you up to X number of dollars that came out of that fund. So, so there's money available that way too. And then net metering laws, typically, the way it typically works is basically tells investor-owned utilities they have to accept your production, usually at retail. Often the laws don't state that, but if you overproduce, you know, if you're producing more than you consume, your meter runs backwards, so on and so forth. There are a lot of variations on that. More and more the states are, the utilities are starting to say, okay, we'll pay you wholesale, not retail. My utility, for example, allows me to overproduce. They'll give me 1-to-1 up until I meet whatever the amount that I've consumed. And then from that point forward, they'll only pay me wholesale for the excess. And that's their program. But they also charge me $42 a month just to be hooked up to the grid, regardless of whether I consume anything.
That's the co-op for you. I got the same problem, Jay.
Yeah. And the co-op
That
charges.
seems kind of high.
It is. It's 42 if you have solar, 20 if you don't.
I was going to say, I've got a co-op in Kentucky with a cabin on it, and I'm never there. I think it's got a refrigerator plugged in, so it still runs, but it's like $19 a month. I don't even pay $40 a month.
Yeah, they kind of, their argument was, you know, because I have solar, I'm not buying as much electricity, and therefore it doesn't offset some of the costs of connecting to the grid. And my counter argument to them was, if you're going to allocate this as a cost to connecting to the grid, shouldn't you just simply charge whatever the cost of connecting to the grid is and allocate that across the board, and then adjust your pricing if you're getting too much profit, you know, from other people or whatever.
They're getting a little bit over time, though. That's what they're saying, I guess. They're amortizing that cost over time built into the charge of what they're charging for the electricity.
Yeah, they also argued that they need to send somebody out to read my meter because it has 3 numbers on it instead of 1. We told them we don't want them traipsing across our farm, so I read the meter for them anyway, and then call it in each month. So normally the way it worked on the bill was you just write what your meter says on your bill, and then they bill you the next time around. So the bottom line is they're not all that keen about solar, and they kind of want to punish it a little bit, but they don't want to punish it too much. So the reality is it still works out fine for me, although $42 does seem excessive for the cost of solar. But because I overproduce on my system, my electric bill is usually around, you know, $15 to $20 a month. So I'm not, I'm willing to pay that to have the grid available to me. But if they make it too onerous, you know, obviously they begin to cut their own throat because people don't really need them. Yeah.
Cut them off, Jay.
That's right. You can go independent with your
Independent.
system. Of course,
That's right.
you'd be thrilled to only pay $40 a month for battery backup for your home, right?
That if I had the option, it would probably be a better option, a cheaper option, yes. But
Yeah.
but I would have at first had to pay for all those poles to come out an extra, half mile, 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah. And that, oh my
And those
God.
aren't cheap.
I think, don't they charge around $10,000 a pole
Yep.
for that kind of
That's
work?
about right. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, so these are the current incentive programs. Chris or Don, can you think of any others that I've missed? Any broad categories or specific incentives? you've
For
run across?
incentives,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I can't think of any. Like I said, I got in, when I got mine, it was right towards the end of, before they started to dial it back, I got like 30%. And that's about all I'm aware of now. I
Yeah.
made it nice.
Yeah.
Yep. For residential. Yeah, that's
Yes,
about it. For
residential.
commercial, if you start adding up the incentives, if you just go with the big three, the tax credit, 26%,
Mhm.
the REAP grant, if you qualify as a rural business, 25%. Well, now you're up to 51% of the cost underwritten. And if you're profitable and you do pay, say, corporate taxes at, let's throw out a 25% corporate tax rate.
Mhm.
Well, now your system is basically 3/4 paid for. So that's a great deal. I mean, when I've done some of the paperwork, I've found that these systems will pay for themselves in about 3 to 4 years for a commercial entity that's profitable, obviously, taking advantage of all of these. If you're not profitable, if you're not paying taxes, whatever, then
Right.
then the investment tax credit doesn't do you any good. The accelerated depreciation doesn't do you any good. The REAP grant would still be there, but so clearly, I guess, Don, with your experience, when you put in systems for who? What is this, a commercial entity that's installing systems?
I put in systems for myself and my family, but at my job, I also deal with, for example, we have a facility in Delaware, and we didn't put in, the utility came to us with a deal. We've got a lot of them, they're coming to us with deals, and they put in the parking cover that was all solar panel related or all solar panel powered. So we put in those. We've always get proposals coming in from different places because it's a combination of some of the different states have requirements for the local utilities to have X amount of green power. So they have to find this avoids them renting places, and we're going to consume it right there at the plant. So it makes it easier for them. They don't have to really connect it to any big power stations or anything. So there's that aspect. And we've also got, like every big company, I don't know what we pledged, but we pledged we're going to do X% of our power will be renewable by such and such a date. So we go through and kind of, okay, does this make sense? Does this make sense? When we were doing, the last time I looked at this for the bigger projects, it was about, we didn't get the REAP grants, obviously, but we could cover about half of the total cost of the project in the first year. As long, again, as long as you're profitable.
Yeah, are you getting power purchase agreements then with these utilities? Is that how that works?
It depends. And again, our company has decided they want to try and actually use the power instead of just buying a PPA, because that's kind of like an accounting. I mean, people do it, but it's when you have it being generated up in 150 miles away or 200 miles away in Texas, up in the plains, and we're saying we're using it for our plants in Texas. That's not, no, we're really using the power straight out of the grid, and then we're paying somebody to generate renewable energy and taking the credit for that.
Yeah.
We're trying to avoid that, but that's, if they get in a pinch, I got a feeling they might try that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter which electrons you're using, whether it was generated by solar, as long as it's truly being offset properly.
Right, but then you're not really using it. You're just, again, you're offsetting it. You're all you're doing is making a financial investment and offsetting it. And there could be some financial benefit if the grid price goes up or goes down. You've got a locked in price. So it's really more of a financial derivative kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, those were the incentives. Did anybody else have anything you want to add before we call it a day here? Seems
Okay,
good.
everybody's on vacation, right?
Yeah, I
Looks like
noticed
it.
that.
All right. Okay, well, see you guys next week then.
Thanks,
Sounds
Jay.
good.
Take
See you,
care.
Jay. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
You
bye.
too.
Bye.